Hello, hello, and welcome to your weekly astrology forecast. Welcome back. I'm Laura Chung. Just a few announcements before we begin. I am teaching Astrology 101 for beginners on September 1st. And so there's a type form in the description box for you to fill out a short survey. I'm just trying to gauge like what people's interests are and how much people are able to pay during this time. It's an 8-week course. And then I opened up my Patreon, I dusted it off. So there's two options, two tiers for you to join and get more content and have more, I guess, like live interaction with me. And so all of that is in the description box below. This is the best way you can support me and to fund my work in doing more research. So in terms of the recap last week, what did you notice about your Gemini house when Uranus entered the sign of Gemini for the first time since 1948? Did you have any breakthroughs? Did you have any aha moments, epiphanies, awakenings? I guess it's hard for me to gauge because I'm currently in LA, so I'm out of my home. And actually, this is a different setup because I'm starting to lose some light in my little beach bungalow. So um, my computer is down here, but the camera's up there. And so if I'm glancing down to look at my notes, that's why. And so Uranus is transiting my seventh whole sign house of one-on-one relationships, but it's starting to oppose my natal Uranus. So I'm officially in my Uranus opposition. So I've just been having really enlightening conversations with people that are just like changing the form of our relationship. I have a lot of family out here, so I've been doing my rounds, and I also have a lot of friends out here, and I've been also meeting new people. So it's just been really interesting noticing how when Uranus entered Gemini on July 7th, which was exactly a week ago, just paying attention to those things. And then we had a full moon in Capricorn on July 10th, and I went to go visit my grandma's grave, my Hanuman's grave. She's buried in Whittier, California. And I spent the afternoon with my emo, which means auntie in Korean. And it was just a really nice afternoon of talking to my auntie in a very deep way about her family. And I was telling her that um, it's really interesting hearing her perspective on all these stories that my mother used to tell me, like two people living in the same household with same parents but having completely different perspectives on what went down. And she's like, I don't want to make you sad, these stories are really sad. And I was like, I want to hear them, like I want to hear the origin stories of my mother, my aunties, my uncles, and obviously my Halmini, who is no longer with us in the physical form. So it was a very Capricorn centric day. And what's so funny is obviously like I'm Korean. Maybe it wasn't obvious to you, but my auntie was like, to me, no kids, no legacy. She was like shaking her head. And I just laughed because that's also such a Capricorn thing, right? Capricorn is like preserving tradition and family and legacy. And my sister and I don't have kids, and my cousin, her son and his wife don't have kids. Her daughter has one daughter who I'm actually going to go babysit this weekend. And so she doesn't have any cousins, which is kind of sad, you know, because I was fortunate enough to grow up with like so many cousins on both sides of my family. My mom is one of five, and my dad is one of six. So just first cousins alone, I have a lot, like, and they're all spread around New York, New Jersey, Virginia. I have a lot of second cousins as well who are really like we just grew up together, so they're just cousins. And Southern and Northern California, which is why I come here like every year to visit, and then Korea. So yeah, it was really nice. I got really emotional. I drove back and cried the entire way, just hearing these stories of my grandmothers and how they survived through genocide and not only colonial rule of Japan in Korea and World War II, but then the Korean War and just the situation in which my mom grew up and then decided to immigrate to the United States for the American dream. And it just really puts things in perspective of why my parents decided to come here. I asked my mom this last year when I was going through my US imperialism awakening, and she said that she didn't want to raise her kids in a country that was consistently bombed, which I think is so interesting given that that is the safety you find in living in the inside the imperial core. So yeah, I want to hear what came up for you. What reflection have you had? Because that's kind of the vibe for this next week. Mercury will go retrograde, and now we're in retrograde season. So it's a lot about reflection and review. And I love what Stephanie Campos says, who I do the monthly astrology forecast with, that Mercury retrograde and any planetary retrograde is is actually our way of being anti-capitalist, because we can't just go on and creating. We need to pull back and we need to stop and review what we are doing, and if we need to make corrections or if we need to go back to like a previous timeline where maybe we didn't have all the information. Oh my god, this little neighborhood cat is like staring at me. I wish I could show you. It's so funny. um but before we get into the weekly astrology forecast, I just wanted to first read this quote that I just thought was so appropriate for today, and why it's important that if you can't speak out on social media for your job or for whatever reason, that you speak out to your family, you know, at family gatherings or your friends. Make sure that this is spoken about, because none of us are safe. I mean, even with the big beautiful bill or the big ugly bill that Trump passed, our birthright citizenship is on the line. So having like birthright citizenship is not going to protect you anymore if you go against the empire and the interests of the empire. So this is a poem by Pastor Martin Niemöller. He wrote this in 1947, and it's called First They Came. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. And then they came for the socialist, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. So basically, I think it's important that whatever they do to people like all the way over there, specifically Palestinians, the Congolese, the Sudanese, anybody who is being overtly oppressed right now through settler colonialism, and also here in the United States through the ICE raids with, you know, the communities that are documented or not documented. Like no one's illegal on stolen land. Like that's my personal ethos and belief system. And also like everybody was an immigrant to this land at one point, except for the indigenous people of Turtle Island. So if they are so blazingly, is that a word, blazingly, brashly violent towards people, they will do the same thing to you. So it's time for everybody to speak up and speak out against what's happening, because none of us are safe. None of us are free until we are all free. Last week's astrology was interesting because there were 3 really long void moons. And I'm pretty sure now, I have such a bad memory, but I'm pretty sure I shared what to do on void moons. Void moons to me are also anti-capitalist because basically what you should do on void moons is to rest and take a nap, um, visit old friends and family. It's really not a time to start anything new. So I felt like the vibe of last week too, leading up to the full moon, was just like this purging and this release of like old systems and structures and just letting go of old stories. And then on Monday, Uranus entered the sign of Gemini. What's wild is so I'm right now staying in Venice Beach in California. There are already self like driving cars that are taking people around here, and robots, like AI robots that are delivering food. Like they're already in the street here. And I'm just like, wow. And Venice is such an interesting place because, I've been coming to Southern California since I was like a little kid. And Venice was always this hippie, artsy, like okay, I guess like new age community. And now it's become such like a little mini tech hub here that I not that I'm shocked because I'm not really shocked by much these days, but I was a little like, oh my God, that's so Uranus and Gemini. Like I literally had to look and there was nobody driving the car, but there were passengers in the back seat. And I was like, what? So I had a very Uranus and Gemini moment last week when I saw that. And then both Saturn and Neptune are now retrograde. And the Handala Gaza Freedom Flotilla actually set sail today. I'm filming this on July 13th. And back in, when was it, June, when they first tried, um, that was when Jupiter just entered the sign of Cancer. But unfortunately, the Madeleine didn't make it into the shores of Gaza before Jupiter entered the sign of Cancer. And also, Jupiter was in a really tough position because it was in a overcoming square from Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Also, Jupiter has been in it was combust. So for most of July, when Jupiter is being burnt up by the sun, so Jupiter, of course, is in its exaltation in Cancer. There were just certain aspects in the first 2 weeks of June that I was like, I don't think they're going to make it onto the shores, but they're definitely going to make a point across with their humanitarian aid. And so now with Saturn and Neptune retrograde, they're going to try again. And I heard that they're going to keep trying, like they're going to keep having these boats go out. So my prayers are with the Handala, um, and at least making it onto the shores to break the siege. And like I've mentioned in previous forecasts, this is protected by humanitarian law. Israel has no jurisdiction to stop the humanitarian aid boats because also Gaza, the waters in front of Gaza are international waters. What I found interesting too is that as Saturn stationed to go retrograde on, well, yesterday, so July 12th, Trump announced that he won't release the Epstein tapes or the Epstein files, which clearly he's in them, which is why he won't release them. And then we just saw MAGA turning on Trump and then being, and all these like podcast bros being like, wait, like he didn't do what he was going to say he was going to do. Like, shocker, Trump is a convicted felon. Like, hello, you really believe this guy? And it's interesting because the thing that I'm noticing about the Saturn and Neptune conjunction in Aries, which obviously Saturn is authority figures in the sign of Aries, which is like kind of like rogue leadership. Of course, we're going to see people, leaders, politicians doing their own thing. Like they're not abiding by any value system or any moral authority. And when Saturn and Neptune come together, it's about kind of breaking the disillusion, um, and breaking borders. And so what I find interesting is that more and more people are seeing that Democrats and Republicans are one and the same. They are working for the same party. They are working for the interests of US imperialism and capitalism. And it's so funny. It's not funny. It's actually like embarrassing for Cory Booker, who is the senator from New Jersey. But there was this photo that came out, I think on Friday, of um Benjamin Milikowski. Oh my God, the cat literally just captured a bird and is now eating the bird. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I'm so sorry. Um Speaking of rogue leadership, this cat literally just wow. Okay. Um Benjamin Milikowski was in the United States. I don't actually know exactly where, but there was this photo that he took with a bunch of US senators. Obviously, you have Ted Cruz, you have all of the usual suspects, and then you see Cory Booker trying to not be in the shot. He's like hiding, but everyone can see his bald head. And it's interesting that people are finally seeing how Democrats are being paid by APAC and they are not really in the interests of the American people. And I feel like now with what's been happening with Trump's involvement in Palestine, because one of the things that he ran on was that there was going to be no more wars, no more foreign aid to these wars, and also what just happened in Texas with the flooding and his response to it or non-response to it, because Trump's administration was the one that defunded the weather service, so that, and also like disaster relief and all those things. And now with him not releasing the Epstein files, all the MAGA supporters are now turning on Trump. And so what I think the Saturn and Neptune retrograde is just going to start to have people really, hopefully, I mean, I'm like praying that they finally get it, is that they realize that it's us, the people, against the politicians, and that no president, no senator, no politician is going to save us, essentially. So that's my hope. And I think maybe during this Mercury retrograde in the sign of Leo, that other things will get leaked about this, because remember last Mercury retrograde was when Mercury was in the sign of Aries, and Pete Hegseth's war signal chat got leaked. And that's very in line with the archetype of Aries, which is war. And Leo is the archetype of the celebrity. And so I think maybe this retrograde, there will be leaks of celebrities involved in Epstein files. I mean, we all know, we've all seen the pictures, but anyway, now it's being leaked that he was a Mossad agent. And if you really connect the dots and how deep this goes, it's so much more nefarious than anybody could ever possibly imagine. So with that recap, I think going into this week, you might want to think for your own personal life, the Leo house, where is Leo in your chart? And think about 4 to 15 degrees of Leo. And I mean, it's going to impact your whole Leo area of your life. But if you have Leo placements around 4 to 15 degrees, this Mercury will go through your Leo placement 3 times. So it already went past during the pre-shadow that started June 30th. And then now during the retrograde, you're going to review, you're going to kind of like reflect, you're going to like see, oh, is this what I want to do? Can I do this better? Can I revise? And then after the post shadow, which is like sometime in August, you're going to maybe either do the thing or you're closing out that story of your Mercury retrograde. Your Mercury retrograde story will also impact your Mercury ruled houses. So wherever you have Virgo and Gemini, those topics will be pulled into your Leo house. So something to keep in mind. Now, this is the astrology forecast for the week of July 14th through the 20th. And so there's two major things that are happening this week. But first, on July 17th, there's the third quarter moon in Aries. And so we just had a full moon in Capricorn 1 day or 2 days before Saturn stationed to go retrograde. And that was important because Saturn was the ruler of that moon. And we're going through the waning phase. So we're losing the light towards a new moon in Leo, and it will be opposing Pluto in Aquarius. So another reason why this new moon might be more active for you is you're thinking about your Leo area of your house because we're going towards a new moon. On July 18th, Venus and Gemini will sextile Mercury in Leo at 15 degrees. And then later on that day, it will station to go retrograde. And this is a really sweet aspect. This is a day to flirt, share some ideas. Venus in Gemini is a very non-committal Venus because it's in a Mercury ruled sign, which is kind of like, I just want to gather data. I want to spill the tea. I want to talk to a bunch of people at the same time. I would say Gemini and Sagittarius have a reputation of being non-committal signs. So if you have those placements, please let me know. But yeah, Venus in Gemini is all about like the busy bee. It wants to flirt. It wants to like just talk. So this is a great time to meet up with people. Venus is a relational planet. Venus is also about your values and worth. And then Mercury in Leo. Mercury in a fire sign is always very strong in its thoughts and its speech. Mercury and Leo people love affirmations. So I know two Mercury and Leo people, and they're like the best people to go to when you need a pick me up because they'll be like your hype person, your hype girl, hype man. And also, this is a great day just to make connections, send those emails, especially probably you want to do this earlier on in the day before Mercury stations to go retrograde. But see, like, I don't think Mercury retrogrades are a time necessarily not to do anything. It's just a time to double check things and make sure that you're not sending a text message to a group chat that you don't want them to know about. It's just a good time to be very cautious too of like who you share information with and just be more discerning of things. But you know, some people might already live this way. On July 20th, this is a day to pay attention to and be a little cautious of. Mars and Virgo will conjunct the South Node in Virgo. This is a day that if you see something, you say something. This is a day to just be extra wary because the South Node has this releasing effect, this like purging effect. If you think about the North Node, which is Rahu, it's the head of the dragon, it's what you consume, it's what you want to manifest in the physical reality. And then the South Node, which is the tail of the dragon, K2, which is where it needs to excrete its waste. So it has that like releasing effect. And then Mars, which has a severing effect. This is like like releasing something that you no longer need at the individual level. Like if we're talking about your own natal chart, like look at where you have Virgo. This is something that you're releasing that you know no longer need. Essentially, it's something that maybe you've been holding on to. So Virgo's archetype is perfectionism, being self-critical, judgmental. It's like really paying attention to the details to the point where it's driving you a little like crazy. And so the North Node, which is in Pisces, is about trusting in the divine, trusting in what you don't see, trusting in your intuition. Now, at the mundane level, my astrology teacher, Sam Reynolds, actually has a video out about this that you can search on YouTube. It's his you could search Sam Reynolds, Mars and South Node, but his channel is Unlock Astrology. But he just came out with two videos about this particular transit that you might want to check out. And he pointed out that there were other pretty monumental moments in history when Mars and the South Node came together. And one of them was 9/11, COVID, and October 7th. And so, just to give you the energy of what this is, it could be explosive harm to humanity and humans. Now, this isn't to fearmonger, but to pay attention to what currently has been going on in our society and societal collapse as we know it, and just the ways in which we are living here in the United States can no longer sustain itself. So that's why I say, like, when you see something, say something, because, and make sure to, again, speak out when necessary, take precautions, make safety and security for your neighbors and your community a priority, because now more than ever, this is the time to introduce yourself to your neighbors, introduce yourself to like organizations that are already doing the work on the ground, because clearly the police state and this government is not designed to protect us. So I'm currently in Los Angeles, and I've been seeing a lot of news that the gangs in LA are getting together and like uniting in order to protect their communities. Like, that's what we need right now. So think about that, because whenever I talk about these things, a lot of people in my comment section are like, well, what are we supposed to do? What should we do? And this is where the work becomes internal, because in my street where I live back at home, there are all types of people that I don't politically align with. There are Trump supporters. There's people, my neighbors, who I live in a very Zionist city in a very Zionist state. So there are people who have the is not real flag up in their, home. But collective liberation means liberation for all. And so I have to somehow get over my disdain and my yes, judgmental view of their politics, and make sure that I know that we are neighbors, and when shit hits the fan, that we have to protect each other. I haven't really gotten there yet, but I'm working on it. But I have introduced myself to all my neighbors. um and so it's so important to get over yourself in some ways, to get over your ego sometimes, and understand what conflict resolution and repair really looks like in real life, because the micro is going to help prepare you for the macro. And even I was just with my cousins earlier this morning, and we were talking, and my cousin actually and his wife lost their home in the Palisades fire. And um like, they were talking about how they didn't think that it was going to get that bad where they would lose their home. But now we have to prepare for things like natural disasters and climate crisis and being a climate refugee. And I was telling them, even last summer, I was like, you should have a to-go bag, because that's what will help prepare you. And they're like, don't you think that's a stream? I'm like, well, you just survived a fire. You tell me. And a lot of their neighbors didn't take it seriously. So it's kind of like we're at that moment where we have to watch out for the signs, and we have to be prepared. And also, not to the point of panic or being anxious, but working on our nervous system so that we're grounded enough to handle the changes to the systems that we are all going to have to grapple with in the next coming years, as we are in the age of revolution at this moment. So yeah, like, we are fully going to be in retrograde season now, this week, and the astrology of later of July is going to get a little better, I think, just because um I think we've been really hit with some interesting once in a lifetime astrology. And just like paying attention to what this means for us individually will also help you prepare for what is going to eventually, like, none of us really know what's going to go down. There are definitely prophecies from indigenous people. There are, astrological transits that we can look in the past to then see, like, oh, this is what could possibly happen in the next one, which I talked about in the last week's astrology forecast of what other previous Uranus and Gemini cycles have been. But none of us really know. And so I think it's also important to remember that nothing is written in stone. Everything is co-created in this reality, in this moment, through us, our intention, our focus, and our action. So please do not give up hope. And this is why it's so important to surround yourself with people who have that radical optimism, because we came here at this specific time in history to do our thing, to do our mission. And I'm just going to keep saying that every week because I think it's important to not lose hope. And also, somebody in my comment section on Instagram mentioned about Superman, the movie, and how the comic Superman came out, I think, during a previous Uranus and Gemini. I have to go read that comment again, but I think it's also interesting that Superman was an alien. He was an extraterrestrial person, extraterrestrial who chose to be human, who chose to use his superhuman gifts to be a humanitarian person. He is also an illegal alien. So I want to go watch that movie this week because I also heard that there's some is not real Gaza themes in it too. And I think that is so Uranus and Gemini, like his Superman's archetype. Also the twins, right? The duality of having two, like he's Clark Kent and also Superman. So that's worth investigating. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that I get to do this every week with you. Again, if you want to do this live, I have a Patreon, and then monthly horoscopes for each rising sign. And then make sure to fill out the form about the Astrology 101 class that's coming up in September. And I'll see you next week. Bye.